mulattoes with their snakes. In a word, whatever is considered in that season to be a fashionable novelty. But all that they show there in the Montmartre theatre, as if it proceeded among the beings similar to them breeding on other continents of their planet, has in no case anything in common with what I, who had existed everywhere, and who had been greatly interested to see and study all specific manifestations of the beings of each given locality, had in fact seen there on the spot. In recent times in this Montmartre, very many what are called special Russian restaurants had been opened. And both in these special Russian restaurants, as well as the other restaurants, the so-called artists and actors are beings of just the great community Russia, mostly from those beings of the former ruling class there. It will be as well to notice and to draw your attention to the fact that the fathers and grandfathers of these artists or actors of the contemporary Montmartre theatre restaurants still only quite recently in these various establishments there in Montmartre, thanks of course to what is called the sweat of peasants, laughed at and insulted the individual dignity of the beings of other communities. But now their children and grandchildren themselves are humbled and serve as objects of the satisfaction of the Hasnamussian caprices of what are called the much-moneyed beings of other communities. As regards such a condition of affairs, our wise Mullah Nasr ad-Din has also a very wise saying. He namely says, "If a father likes to ride, though it be but a child's sled, his son must obligatorily be prepared to drag the great village sleigh up the mountainside." While I sat in one of those restaurants with my said new friend, the Persian, he was called away by some other acquaintances, Persians, and I remained alone at the table with the champagne, the ordering of which in these restaurants at night in Montmartre is in general obligatory. At this point in his tale, Beelzebub sighed deeply, and then continued thus. Just now, while telling you about that evening spent in the restaurant in Montmartre among the contemporary three-brained beings breeding on that planet Earth which pleases you, there involuntarily revived in me the being Sarpitimnian experiencing, which I experienced at that time. And now at this moment the memory of all that I experienced is so intensely and repeatedly associated in all the three spiritualized parts of my common presence, that I am compelled to digress from the theme begun, in order that I may share with you these sad and distressing reflections, which were induced in me in those dreadful surroundings in Montmartre, by my solitude after the said young Persian who became my cicerone in Paris had left me. Then, namely, for the second time in the whole of my existence, there proceeded in my being the process of this same being Sarpitimnian experiencing, which had engendered in my common presence a revolt on account of various unforeseeingnesses on the part of our most high, most saintly cosmic individuals, and of all the objective misfortunes flowing from them, which have already obtained and maybe still continue to obtain on this planet Earth, as well as in all our great universe. How is it possible not to foresee in their calculations of the harmonious movement of cosmic concentrations that the comet Condor would collide with this ill-fated planet Earth? If those who should have done so had foreseen this, then all subsequent unfortunate consequences issuing one from the other would not have happened, and there would not have been the need to implant in the first three brain beings of that ill-fated planet that, for them, maleficent organ Kundabuffer, which was the cause of all subsequent distressing and terrifying results. It is true that later, when it was no longer necessary, and this for them maleficent organ was destroyed, they yet again did not foresee that by the destruction of the organ itself, the possibility was not destroyed that in the future the given consequences of its properties would, owing to a certain manner of existence of the beings, become crystallized in the presences of their descendants. In other words, they did not foresee for the second time, also, that even if it were possible to destroy that organ, yet the fundamental cosmic law Heptaparaparshanok, with its Mdel-ins, nevertheless remains, in the sense of the evolutionary process for the three-brained beings of the planet Earth, just as for everything existing in the whole universe. It was thanks particularly to the second almost criminal unforeseeingness that this situation, terrifying for the three-brained beings, obtains there, namely, that on the one hand, there are in their common presences, as in the presences of all the three-brained beings of our great universe, all the possibilities for coding the higher being bodies. And at the same time, thanks to the crystallization which has become inherent in them of the various consequences of the organ Kundabuffer, it is almost impossible for them to carry the higher sacred parts coded in them up to the required degree of perfecting. And since, according to the fundamental common cosmic laws, such a formation as their higher being part, coded in the common presences of three-brained beings, is not subject to decomposition on planets, and since the planetary body of the beings cannot endlessly exist on planets, and the process of the sacred Raskowarno must inevitably proceed with them at the proper time, therefore, their unfortunate higher bodies, arising in the terrestrial three-brained beings, must inevitably languish also forever in all kinds of exterior planetary forms. Sitting then in solitude in the restaurant in Montmartre and watching the contemporary favorites of yours gathered there, I continued to ponder. How many centuries have passed since that time when I began to observe the existence of the three-brained beings of this ill-fated planet? During these long centuries, many sacred individuals have been sent down to them here from above with the special aim of helping them to deliver themselves from the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer. Yet, nevertheless, nothing has changed here, and the whole process of ordinary being existence has remained as before. During this time, no difference whatsoever has arisen between those three-brained beings of this planet who existed nearly 100 of their centuries ago and the contemporary ones. Are not the beings sitting here the same? And do they not behave as unbecomingly as the beings of the city Samlios on the continent Atlantis, which was considered by all the three-brained beings of that time as the source and place of concentration of the results of attainments, in the sense of the perfecting of their reason? Or as the contemporary beings here would say, the chief center of culture, and where I also sat among the beings there in their, as they then called similar restaurants, Sakrupiaks. And after Atlantis had perished, and many, many centuries had passed, when I was on the continent Asia in the city of Korkolai, their new center of culture of that ancient community there called Tikliamish, and sat at times among them in their Kaltani, which were similar,